406.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the 411 from 406. My name is Chewie, and I'm joined once again by my brother from another mother, Mr. Pip. How are you, sir?
I'm doing fantastic. After about 6 or 7 false starts, this is the moment I've been waiting for so long. We are finally podcasting live in front of each other and our naked, steaming eyes right here. It is the moment I've been waiting for so long. I'm super pumped about this.
Yeah. So this is the second podcast to hit the feed in 2022. I hit the first one. I actually posted the first one just this morning. I recorded it earlier. I don't know, maybe a couple weeks ago. No, maybe 10 days ago. And I recorded it. I posted it earlier today because I was on the way and I was a little bit vain and I wanted to listen to myself, listen to our podcast. But I am actually face to face with my brother in Indianapolis. I can't even remotely begin to describe how excited I am to be back home in Indiana. This is amazing. It's good to see you, sir.
It is so much fun. It is great to see you. It's good to have you back home in Indiana. It's not technically your home, but you did spend a couple years here going to school and all of that stuff. So very glad to have you here and very glad to do this live and in person. I mean, I'm not even sure what the hell we're going to talk about tonight, but this is going to be a blast. And I'm really, really pumped.
No, you know, it's funny. I mean, so we'd started this podcast. I don't know, God, it's got to be at the very beginning of COVID, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so this is, I don't know, episode 65, 66, 67, whatever it is. And we started this podcast at the beginning of COVID. And this was always what I envisioned this podcast to be. It was you and I sitting down, talking about whatever, whether it's movies or wrestling or what have you. And I can't even begin to tell you how excited I am that we're finally able to do it face to face. I know, I think we might have recorded a couple things when we were together the last time. I don't know that I ever even posted it, right?
Probably not.
We were sitting at a brewery and we were drinking Bloody Marys. What brewery was that at?
So that was, I believe that was Missing Mountain Brewery. And I don't know if it was in Cleveland proper, but it was somewhere.
Akron or Stowe or what? Yeah.
Somewhere around there. Yeah. It was a great brewery. Got a good hat. I got a great Bloody Mary. There were some really good beers there and good food and all kinds of stuff.
So it's entirely possible that I have that recording on my phone somewhere and just never posted it. So, hey, maybe I will post that here in the near future. But yeah, I drove from Cleveland this morning. I drove from Cleveland to Indianapolis, and we're gonna sit down tomorrow night. And we're gonna watch the Royal Rumble. I'm pumped. It's probably, obviously, WrestleMania is my favorite pay-per-view of the year, but Royal Rumble is a very close second. I'm
sure.
A huge fan.
Well, it's the one event that has its own kind of shtick to it, right? So it's the one where, you know, it's the Battle Royal flavored pay-per-view where instead of a Battle Royal, they introduce new competitors every couple minutes and they come in and they fight for their right to get to WrestleMania to challenge the current champion to take the title. And more so than SummerSlam, more so than Survivor Series or any of the other sort of ancillary pay-per-views that come in between, it has stakes, right? It has something that it's building up to for something. They call it the road to WrestleMania for a reason. That's why this is exciting, because it's the beginning of the year. It's the beginning of what's building up to what is the Super Bowl of sports entertainment. It's WrestleMania.
This is the best time of the year to be a wrestling fan in terms of WWE, right? I mean, it's WrestleMania season, and you can really kind of ignore, if you're thinking about a season, you can really kind of ignore a whole lot up until you get to January. Once you get to January, once you get to the Royal Rumble, you really are on the road to WrestleMania, and everything that happens from now until March or April, whenever WrestleMania happens, it matters, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
This is really what happens from a storyline perspective. This is where you need to care.
Yeah.
If you want to understand what's going on in WrestleMania, now is the time to start paying attention.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a 4-month period where, for those wrestling fans who subscribe and pay attention to WWE, like, this is the time that matters the most. It all starts with the Royal Rumble, and whoever wins the Royal Rumble and whatever direction all of these storylines start taking, they start mattering right about now. So this is exciting for wrestling fans.
Yeah.
Sure.
So I don't know about you, but I candidly, I really have not been paying attention to a whole lot of storyline wise WWE. I watch almost every pay-per-view, but there's a boatload of stuff that happens, from pay-per-view to pay-per-view that I do not pay attention to. I really don't even know what we're dealing with tomorrow night. Do you have any idea?
No, not really. I mean, there are a couple of storylines that I am familiar with, but not necessarily have followed. I mean, the biggest part of the Royal Rumble is the Royal Rumble itself, right? It's the match where 30 competitors come in and they fight for their chance to win an opportunity to go for the belt in WrestleMania. I have occasionally watched Raw on and off. I don't watch SmackDown because it's on Friday nights, and I don't know who's watching wrestling on Friday nights. That's just not terribly practical for most people, but I watch Raw on occasion, and it gives me about half of the story of what's going on, and that's fine. But again, much like you, like I sort of believe that nothing really counts until we get to this point in time. So it's going to be interesting what happens, and I'm excited about it. Brock Lesnar is going to fight tomorrow against Bobby Lashley, and I honestly, I can't remember any of the other matches off the top of my head, but I think there will be some good ones. But obviously, the Rumble is why we all come to this. And there can be a lot of surprises, and it's super fun, and it's very engaging, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah. So it's funny. So as I'm sitting here and we're recording this at 11:26 p.m. on Friday evening, the night before the Rumble, I'm looking at Wikipedia, and there are 6 matches.
Okay. All right.
6 matches
Let's go
announced for the Rumble.
Yeah. Let's talk about them.
So there's 2 that you're not going to be able to call. The first one is the Rumble itself.
Sure.
The second one is the Ladies Rumble. I didn't realize there was a Ladies Rumble this year.
I forgot about that.
But
yeah,
there is.
I actually think that's going to be really, really good.
It's going to be outstanding.
Yeah.
It is, because here's the thing, right? You got 30 men and 30 women. I don't know who the fuck are going to be in either of them, quite frankly. Yeah, there's probably 20 of them that I can guess. But once you get beyond that, especially in the women, there's going to be a boatload of names that I just don't know.
Yeah. And hopefully there's some surprises in there too, because historically they've done a really great job of tossing a couple competitors in there that were either legends or legends in the respect of the era that they came out of, right? The Legends era. We were talking earlier about Honky Tonk Man showed up in one of the Rumbles, I think in the early 2000s, and you never really know who's going to arrive. Now, if Honky Tonk Man or anybody of that era comes in, they're not going to win, but it's going to be fun to see them, and maybe they'll throw somebody out, or maybe something will happen. But I think the women's Rumble is going to be really good. And depending on what else is on that card will sort of dictate how interesting the Rumble is going to be. I don't know if Charlotte Flair is on that card, but if she's in the Rumble, it's going to be amazing, because she is by far the best female talent, one of the best talents, period, but easily the best female.
So she is not on this card.
Mm-hmm.
I'll talk to you about the 4 other matches on this card, and then we can come back and we can talk about the Rumble. Okay.
Perfect.
So the first match, again, this is just from Wikipedia, and I will say I did watch the latest WWE. And they're not even calling them pay-per-views anymore. They're calling them special events or something. They're not even called pay-per-views. The last one was called Day One. And going into that event, so this was on January 1st, and so it's called Day One. And going into that event, it was supposed to be Roman Reigns versus Brock Lesnar. That was the big match.
Sure.
Well, Roman Reigns tested positive for COVID, so fuck COVID. We're all fucking sick of it. Don't even want to talk about it anymore. Right? We all fucking hate it. it is what it is. But he tested positive, and so he like that day, and he had to back out. Well, I don't. That's what they said.
Sure.
I don't know. I never saw the positive test.
Interesting storyline.
Fair enough. Yep. And so they put Brock Lesnar into at the time it was the 4-way or the 5-way, and he ended up winning the WWE Championship. So the first match on the card tomorrow night is, well, again, per Wikipedia, I have no idea how they're going to do the card, is Brock Lesnar as the champion versus Bobby Lashley for the WWE Championship. So that is, whether you like these guys or not, that is two mammoth fucking human beings. Like they're both, I mean, just like muscles on top of muscles on top of muscles. So who do you like between Bobby Lashley and the reigning and defending champion, Brock Lesnar?
I think it's going to be Lashley. I think he's going to take it. I do think he's going to take it.
You think he's going to win? Like win the title? Yeah,
I think that he will, only because I don't see Brock defending the title at WrestleMania. I think that they're setting up for whoever's going to win the Rumble to take the title at WrestleMania. And from my perspective, I feel like it would be more, there's a lot of things to consider here. So is Roman in the Rumble?
Roman is defending his title his title.
Oh, he still has a title.
Which is a different title later in the night. Yes.
Okay, so maybe that, I don't know, they may pull like a completely random swerve that nobody's expecting, but I don't think they're going to set Brock Lesnar up to lose the title at WrestleMania. That doesn't make sense to me.
Okay.
They may let Bobby Lashley keep the title through WrestleMania, or they may let him lose at WrestleMania, but I don't see Brock Lesnar coming just to lose the title at WrestleMania. So
you don't see Lesnar going into WrestleMania as a champion and coming out as not a champion.
Correct.
You're saying, okay. Regardless. Yeah. Okay. I gotcha.
Yeah. I don't think so. I mean, it's complete conjecture at this point.
Okay.
But that's kind of the way that I see it. What about you?
I would tend to agree with you, other than the fact that I don't think Lesnar was scheduled to win the title at day one.
Really?
I don't think he was, because he was scheduled to wrestle Roman Reigns.
Yeah.
So he was scheduled to wrestle Roman Reigns for the Universal Championship.
Mm-hmm.
And then they put him in the title picture for the Universal Championship because Reigns tested positive.
Yeah.
So they clearly, like at the last minute, kind of changed course. So I don't know. Now, it's entirely possible that they had him scheduled to beat Reigns at day one, but we'll never know.
Doubt it.
I doubt it too. I personally think they're setting up for Reigns versus The Rock.
Sure.
Whenever they do it, whether it's at this year's WrestleMania or I think next year's WrestleMania, which is going to be in Hollywood, California. That's what I think they're going for.
That could be.
So I don't know. I do tend to agree with you, though, that I'm not sure that Lesnar is going to come to WrestleMania and lose.
Right.
So I don't know.
But I don't know who's going to be the champion, right?
Like, well, if he's not going to come to WrestleMania and lose, then that would mean he would lose tomorrow night, because then I would see he would go into WrestleMania as the challenger and then win.
Possibly, but Big E is still not out of this whole thing, right? Like is Big E in the Royal Rumble? I feel like he probably is, because Big E's the one that lost the title, right? Like Big E's the one that doesn't have a title anymore. Big
E, I can only imagine he's in the Rumble because he's not listed in the
I don't think they're done with him yet.
I would agree.
I think he could potentially take the title back. Now, obviously it won't be until Mania, probably at this point, but I think Big E's maybe a sleeper for winning the Rumble.
Okay, so you think maybe Lesnar then? Now, let me ask you a question. What happens if Lesnar retains and then it's Big E versus Lesnar at WrestleMania?
Big E takes it.
You think Big E takes it?
I don't think they keep the belt on on Brock no matter what. I just don't think they do. I don't think he's a long-term play for the WWE.
No, you're
in fact, I thought he was going to come in and lose right away to Roman and then disappear like Cena did, and like everybody else that's been sort of lined up against Roman. But maybe to your point, if Roman legitimately tested positive for COVID, maybe they're like, well, we got to figure something. But Roman still has a belt. Like,
he has the Universal Championship.
He has the Universal belt. So does. I don't know. There's so much going on here. It's kind of hard to keep up with. Yeah.
So this is I'm kind of at a loss here because Becky Lynch, who is the Raw Women's Champion, is wrestling Doudrop. I don't know who the fuck that is. Doudrop. Doudrop. I don't know.
You sound like my dad right now.
I don't know. Do you know who that is?
Yeah.
Oh, do you? Okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. She's on Raw. She is she's another.
I sound like your dad. Like, I love Richard, but that sucks.
Well, you're like trying to read her name and pronounce it all at the same time. Yes, her name is Doudrop. And I have no defense for this character or who this is, but yeah, she is an active talent on the roster, and she has been wrestling on Raw for a little while now. She is, I believe, of Scottish descent because she's got a very thick accent that sounds very similar to Becky Lynch. Scottish, Irish, something close to that.
Yeah, she's from Scotland.
Okay, Scotland. Okay, so forgive me for not knowing the difference between Irish and Scottish.
She doesn't even have a picture on Wikipedia, so that's a problem.
Yeah, well, she's been a character. I don't think for a second that she's going to take the title. Like, not a chance. Becky Lynch, no way in hell will she lose the title to this girl at a Royal Rumble. Like, Becky Lynch is going to take the title to WrestleMania. Absolutely, 100%. Yeah, she's either going to lose it to Charlotte Flair or, well, I don't know. She's not on the same show as Charlotte. So, but I guess it doesn't matter when you go to WrestleMania, right? So it's either going to be like someone of the stature of Charlotte Flair, or Ronda Rousey's going to come back.
Coming back.
Ronda Rousey's going to come. There's a lot of rumors about her showing up tomorrow at the Rumble.
Okay, well, I would love that, and
I would too.
And we'll get in the Rumble here in a minute. So you think Becky Lynch is going to beat Doudrop?
Absolutely,
okay,
not
right.
Even.
I would tend to agree with you only because I've never fucking heard of Doudrop, and she doesn't have a picture on Wikipedia. So
I will be completely uninterested in that match only because I think it's a foregone conclusion. Yeah. Becky Lynch does not drop that title.
So the next announced match, again, I'm going from Wikipedia, is I'm actually really interested in this. Edge and Beth Phoenix versus The Miz and Maurice. Now here, before I
take a giant dump all over a mixed tag match.
Here's the thing, right? This is the kind of match like where on paper, clearly Edge and Beth Phoenix, two WWE Hall of Famers, are clearly going to beat the shit out of The Miz, who is like, he's gonna be a Hall of Famer. I'm not taking anything away from Miz, but he was a fucking MTV reality star. And Maurice, who is hot, but is just like a reality star, right?
Barely a talent,
I guess. But this is the kind of match that, like, in history, Miz and Maurice win. Historic, like, if you look back,
I can see that.
Historically, Miz and Maurice win this match.
There's really no benefit to put Edge over for this match, right?
No.
I mean, there really isn't. Like, he's not going for titles at this point.
Not at all.
I think Miz still has enough gas in the tank to be a world champion. Absolutely 100%. Yeah. In fact, I'll be really bummed if they don't give it back to him at some point. But Edge is sort of like, he's like that legend that comes back. He's already in the Hall of Fame, right?
Yeah. And Beth Phoenix is
too, yeah. So he's coming back and he's still wrestling, but there's no reason to give him a belt. There's no reason to put him over anything. He is there to do nothing but put the other guys over. So he is there to make Miz look better. He is there to make, well, he fought Randy Orton not too long ago, and Randy Orton is kind of in the same category, maybe a little bit behind,
a little bit younger, but
in terms of, Edge is already in the Hall of Fame. Edge is a little bit older, but Randy Orton is that point in his career with this whole RK Bro thing where it's really fucking goofy.
It's the worst mustache in WWE right now. It's terrible. It's like,
it's Chester the Molester level goofiness. Sad, But that aside, like, there's no reason to put Edge over. Like, if you want to give him a run at one of the other belts, then that's fine. But I think this is the whole reason for putting this match in place is to get Miz pushed.
I was going to say,
I think you have to.
I would kind of be shocked
because he's not done.
I would kind of be shocked if it ended any other way other than Miz pinning Edge. It doesn't do any good for Maurice to pin Beth Phoenix, right? It just doesn't.
And that would be, in my opinion, the ultimate mea culpa for having Bad Bunny pin Miz at WrestleMania last year, because I was pissed about that. Yeah. I don't care about Bad Bunny winning. He should not be pinning the Miz. That's ridiculous. It's so silly, and the Miz is better than that. Like, they need to treat him as a more credible talent than what they did at WrestleMania.
Yeah, you're just bitter that you picked against the Miz last year, aren't
That's you? Not entirely untrue.
Okay, and then the last announced match again, other than Rumbles, is Roman Reigns versus Seth freaking Rollins for the Universal Championship. And again, before you start, I'm on record. I think Reigns is holding the title at least through WrestleMania.
Oh yeah.
I think he's on a collision course versus The Rock. And again, I don't know if it's this WrestleMania or next. If I had to guess, I would say at this point it's probably next, because you haven't seen hide nor hair of The Rock. I think that's where they're going, and I don't think Seth Rollins. At this point, Roman Reigns has had the title for almost 300 days. It's a long fucking time.
True.
At this point, I think they're just going to kind of keep it on it. Maybe I'm wrong, but who knows?
No, there's no reason to give it to Seth Rollins at this point. I mean, I think Seth Rollins is a fantastic talent in the WWE, and I think he deserves a title. But the WWE is clearly putting all of their chips into Roman Reigns as a heel, as a title holder. It makes no sense. There's absolutely no logic behind taking that away from him now. Now, granted, there was no logic behind taking the Undertaker streak away from him in WrestleMania when Brock Lesnar did that. Yeah. But, they do what they do, and that's fine. I think that I agree with you in that I feel like he's lining up against The Rock, but I hope sincerely that it's not next year. I hope it's this year, only because that means they won't take the title off of him for a whole nother year. And I still don't think it makes sense to take the title off of him to give it to The Rock. I think we've talked about this on a previous podcast, but The Rock's not a wrestler. He's not a talent anymore. So everybody's going to be assuming that The Rock's going to come in and win the belt, but it makes no sense to take the belt off of Roman to give it to The Rock. They need to anoint the next great babyface champion in the WWE, and I still don't think they know who that's going to be.
See, they've painted themselves into a really serious corner. Mm-hmm. So I would tend to agree with you, because even though I think they're headed towards Roman versus Rock, I don't think they should give the title to Rock.
Absolutely I really not.
Don't. It was really cool a couple of years ago when The Rock beat, I can't remember who he beat. It was at the Rumble, might have been Seth, was it Rollins or was it Lesnar, whoever it was, but he again, this is several years ago, but I would agree with you. I don't think he should win the title.
No.
And the problem that they're running into, they don't have a babyface nearly strong enough to beat Roman Reigns.
They really don't.
Here's the thing. Everybody hated Roman Reigns for years and years and years while he was a babyface.
Yeah.
And now they've turned him heel, and now he's a fucking monster heel.
Yep.
There's not a babyface strong enough to take the title. It's not what's his name, the surfer dude. It's not Randy Orton. There's just not. Now here's the thing: does John Cena come back and win Rumble as the pacemaker? Is he the one to do it? Is he a babyface? He's the only babyface maybe big enough.
He is absolutely the babyface big enough to pull it off. Should they do it? That's a totally different story, because John Cena is off making movies. He's not a wrestler. Him and The Rock are doing their thing.
I agree. It's the same argument with The Rock, right? Yeah.
but I think that the longer that they keep the belt on Roman, the more that they are building up the importance
bigger
of the
face,
belt.
right?
You need somebody who can take that belt and be the guy. You can't put it on a guy who's a part-timer.
Nope.
You can't put it on an old-timer.
You can't put it on Miz. He's not big enough at this point, right? He's just not. The Miz is like,
well, they could put it on the Miz, but not now, because they've sort of postured the Miz as this Hollywood bad boy, right? You need it. He's not a face. He's not a baby face right now. So they need to find the baby face. They need to find the next John Cena. And maybe that's what they're doing. They're just biding their time, but they need to figure it out like really quick. And I don't know who that is yet. And maybe it's, I don't, Biggie. I don't.
I'll tell you what, I think they're fucked. I don't think there's anybody. I don't think there's anybody currently on the roster that is a big enough babyface to take the title off of what they've built in Roman Reigns. They have what they've done. So they took the biggest babyface, arguably since John Cena, and they turned him heel. Right. Yeah. So you had Roman Reigns, who
they had to, because everybody hated him.
No, they did. And don't get me wrong. I'm a huge fan of Roman Reigns as a heel, a huge fan.
Yeah.
But the problem is he was a face for so long, and a face that everybody hated, right? And like the WWE was fucking pushing, and they finally turned him heel. And now he's such a colossal heel. I don't think they have a babyface big enough. I just don't know who it is.
I don't either.
And even if they bring John Cena back,
it's not a good play.
It's not.
It's right? Really not.
Because Cena's the same quote unquote problem as The Rock. Whether it's The Rock or Cena or whatever it is, it's the same issue. Or Taker or whoever it is. You can't bring back a legend, quote unquote, to take him out, and they don't have a babyface powerful enough to take him.
They're bringing back a lot of legends just to show that he can overpower them. I agree with you 100%. Like, I don't know where this is. I don't think they're fucked, because they, WWE has existed for decades upon decades. So they'll find a way out of this. Maybe they'll roll the dice. Maybe they'll take their chance on somebody who's out there who, we just didn't expect. I don't think it's going to be like a Riddle or anything like that, but it could be, I don't know. There could be somebody out there that we're just not even thinking about. Who is the Money in the Bank? The Money in the Bank's done, right? Like that already get cashed in.
I honestly don't know. I haven't been paying attention enough to know.
I can't remember that, but I'm pretty sure that's not a factor anymore. But
and then the only other match tomorrow night is the Women's Royal Rumble, and I couldn't even tell you who it's in, or who's in it. So I can't really even speak to it.
Yeah, I know the Bella twins are coming back to be in that. I'm sure they'll have a couple legends that'll come in and make a few appearances and then phase out. I really do wonder if Ronda Rousey is going to be in that. I think that it would make sense for them to do that if they can pull her in to push her towards a WrestleMania match. But who knows?
Charlotte's got to be in there, right?
I think does she not have a belt right now? No, Becky's got one. Who's got the other? Who's
I don't even know. That's terrible. But she's not like listed on the card. So how do we feel about the fact that fucking Johnny Knoxville is gonna be in the Rumble?
No.
Are we not happy? Are we happy?
I can confidently tell you I'm never happy when any celebrity gets in the Royal Rumble, and I think it soils the mystique of wrestling in general, which I get. Most people know that this is all goofy bullshit and it's all scripted and it is what it is. But when you put Johnny Knoxville in there, just like when you put Drew Carey in there or any other celebrity for that matter, I hate it. I absolutely hate it. It takes all the punch out of it for me.
So per Wikipedia, Charlotte Flair is indeed in the Royal Rumble.
Okay. Good.
So for the win.
Good. So she wins it. I'm calling that now.
I would tend to agree with you.
Calling that now. No way she doesn't win it.
So I would imagine that we will probably see some legends, some names we haven't seen before, both in the men's and the women's Rumble.
Yeah.
But I would tend to agree with you. I think Charlotte Flair is going to win. On the men's side, if you had to pick one name, who do you pick? One name. And again, this is, you don't even know who all is in there, but who do you pick?
Oh, Jesus. That's a really tough one. So I have to kind of take a step back and think who is in it versus who is not. So we know that Brock is not.
I'm happy to read you who they have announced as of this recording, who's in it. I'm going to rattle them off real quick.
Okay.
And this will be really fucking boring for our listeners, but Angelo Dawkins, Montez Ford, no. Rey Mysterio, Dominic Mysterio, no. Austin Theory, Johnny Knoxville, fuck you. Sheamus, Damian Priest, AJ Styles, Big E is in.
Big E wins.
Happy Corbin. Happy fucking Corbin. Like, fuck that dude.
Corbin. That's where we've gone.
Madcap Moss, Sami Zayn, Kofi Kingston, Kevin Owens, Omos, Randy Orton, Riddle, Chad Gable, Otis. Otis is my fucking spirit animal, by the way. Don't, like a fat guy with a beard. That's my guy. Right? Dolph Ziggler, Robert Roode, Shittstain, Rick Boogs.
What?
Rick Boogs, that's what he said, and Ricochet. That's who's been announced for the Royal Rumble. So,
you know who my sleeper is for that?
Rick Boogs.
Kevin Owens.
Yeah, that's a good.
Kevin Owens is my sleeper.
That's.
I think
I would not be
legitimately.
Shocked at all. Yeah.
Kevin Owens is my favorite modern day wrestler. Today. He is so good.
Yeah.
There's something about him that he puts everything in every single fucking match he has.
Yep.
I would love to see Kevin Owens win the Royal Rumble.
Rick Boogs is my dark horse.
I'm sorry, who?
Rick Boogs.
Who is Boobs?
I
don't know what's happening.
Yeah. So tomorrow night we're gonna hear that. I don't know. We're gonna be shit canned hammered and record it. We probably won't record anything, but
you never know.
Yeah. So that's wrestling tomorrow night. Are we gonna do like a Rumble mid? Like a beer mid Rumble mid? No, probably not.
I hadn't even thought about that.
Right? We can do that.
We should probably try.
We probably should do that. Even if it's like 6 beers. We should probably do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So let's talk Scream. Let's talk movies.
Okay.
Okay.
Fuck yeah, I want to do it.
Okay. So I went the other night to see Scream. I dropped off my son at his girlfriend's house, and it just like worked out. It was perfect. And the time worked out. I went to go see Scream. And I know you had seen it at the very top. Up or down, up arrow, down arrow. But before talking about it, going into it, just up or down.
Yeah.
Recommend or not recommend?
I'd say up arrow.
Okay.
I'd say I recommend. It's definitely not a sequel that wasted my time, and it did some really good things. But yeah, that's mine. It's
okay. I would agree with that wholeheartedly. Absolutely recommend. If you are a fan of the Scream franchise, a 100% recommend. If we're rating these movies between, so Scream 1 through 4, and this is number 5, this is probably my second favorite.
Really?
Or at the very number 4 and number 5, it's right there. It's razor thin between the two. I have some issues with this movie, but it was an absolutely enjoyable movie. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Yes, absolutely recommend. So this is on a previous podcast, we've talked about Ghostbusters. We've talked about The Force Awakens. We talked about Halloween Kills. This is one of those movies that, and even in the movie, they referred to it as a requel. So this is a retelling or a sequel of the original movie. And essentially what this is, in my mind, this is the retelling of Scream. It's the same way that The Force Awakens essentially retells Star Wars or A New Hope. It's almost the same movie, almost beat for beat, with a couple minor changes, but it's essentially the same movie.
Yeah.
This movie did a great fucking job of bringing back the original characters, the original beats, way better than Ghostbusters did. Arguably better than Star Wars did. I think this is a really, really good requel.
Yeah, I think it's pretty solid. I think, first of all, I want to acknowledge this new Scream movie for introducing us to the requel vernacular, because I think we've been trying to put a designation or a categorization on this type of movie for a while now, and requel, I think, makes a lot of sense. So, these requels or this movie in particular, I think it was good. I agree with most of what you're saying. I think that this movie is an interesting sort of case study in how this series has evolved over time, right? Because the very first movie, as we kind of talked about, was more of a commentary on horror movies and slasher movies and that genre.
You talking about the original?
Yeah, the original Scream.
Okay.
And things have evolved quite a bit since that movie, which came out in 1996 at this point. So things are a little bit different now, and we don't have slasher franchises in 2022 like we did back in the mid 90s. And even in the mid 90s, we didn't really have a lot of slasher franchises. We had a lot of slasher franchises that were ending. They were coming to an end. So Freddy's Dead or Jason Goes to Hell or, whatever all of that stuff was. So, yeah, I mean, overall, I think this was an interesting movie. There were some things that I liked about it. There were some things that I didn't like about it. Overall, I enjoyed the experience. I think it was good, but we talked about, you and I talked about, this other podcast that we like to listen to, the Now Playing podcast. I would like to say our friends over there, but we don't know them. They don't know us, but they made a lot of really good points. This movie was largely, it was good, but it was also kind of forgettable. I mean, I don't know that this movie and the fourth movie have a lot in common in that they didn't really do enough to push along the narrative in any specific direction. They were both entertaining and I like them, but I don't really know that I ever care whether or not I see another Scream movie again.
So I clearly would absolutely recommend this film, but it's funny you say that. So my 15-year-old son is kind of starting to get into horror movies, right? And he has never seen any of the Scream movies. He and his girlfriend sat down and they started watching the MTV TV version of Scream, which I have never seen, but it has nothing. I do know that it has nothing to do with Woodsboro. It has nothing to do with the kind of this Scream universe that we are familiar with. And this movie clearly is an enjoyable, good slasher movie. But if you don't know the Scream mythos, if you don't know the Scream story, it's not a recommendable movie because you would have no fucking idea why you should care about any of these characters, who the fuck Billy Loomis is. You wouldn't know any of these characters, right? And it would be if you literally came into this movie cold, it would not be a recommendable film, in my opinion. Now, the fact that I have all this history with the Scream franchise, it's absolutely a recommendable, but you need to put some work in order to care about this movie. I think one of the things that the Now Playing folks did, they pointed out a really interesting fact, and it's the fact that this sort of movie really only works for an age of moviegoers that care about this type of movie. They care about the Scream franchise. They understand it, but also not only the Scream franchise, but they really kind of understand what the Scream franchise is commenting on, which is even more kind of a bigger issue, right? The fact that you and I are in our mid-40s, we have a certain relationship with Freddy Krueger and Jason Voorhees and Michael Myers and Ghostface and Pinhead and what have you. Kids now that are in their teens or 15, they just don't care about that stuff.
True.
They don't know who any of these characters are. And so if they're coming into this series now, especially with this movie, they have no fucking idea what it's referring to. And if they don't, this is a kind of a pretty weak movie.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that that's sort of what the series started basing itself off of, is all of the meta self-referential commentary off of the slasher franchises that sort of put the horror genre on the map in the 80s. And I don't think that that's a thing anymore for moviegoers or for kids that are growing up these days. So Scream has had to sort of shift their, I don't know if narrative is the right word, but shift the motif of what they're doing into just being, meta, just breaking the fourth wall, just talking about what movies are doing and sort of the goofiness of all of that. And, like one character talks about, my favorite horror movie is Babadook and It Follows and things like that. So like things are changing and I respect that because things have to grow and things have to change. But this movie is interesting because it's sort of wrestling with the idea of trying to push it forward, yet also trying to bring in some of the older characters. And I don't know if it does a good enough job of that. I mean, it does a decent job. This is not a bad movie by any stretch of the means, but I do think it really struggles with what it wants to do ultimately with the characters that helped define this series to begin with.
It's funny. I really, really, really enjoyed the fourth Scream movie. I probably put that. So you had the original from 1996, and I probably put number 4 as my second favorite.
Yeah, that's fair.
But number 4 was really kind of forgettable, right? Like it was a good movie, and if you understood the Scream franchise, you really enjoyed it. But as a standalone kind of slasher flick, yeah, there was a couple of really good kills in it. The Anthony Edwards kill, in my mind, was really good and funny. But beyond that, it wasn't great. And I have a feeling, and you actually mentioned it earlier tonight, I think this movie is probably going to fall into that same category. It's like,
yeah,
anybody younger than 40 is going to look at this movie and be like, yeah, okay, there were some inventive kills. It was interesting. It was kind of gory, but I don't care about any of these characters. I don't give a fuck. Well, first of all, anybody younger than 40 doesn't know who Sidney Prescott is.
Right.
Doesn't know who Dewey was. Doesn't really care that he died. Certainly doesn't know who Gail Weathers was. And the characters that are introduced in this movie are not going to be, you're not going to care enough about the characters that were introduced here. You don't want a sequel. You don't want to know what their story is. You just don't care.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I don't know what this is. And I would like to try to figure it out. But for some reason, for me, like the first 3 Scream movies are like the trilogy. Like it felt to me that those movies were set up to be 3 movies. And that everything after that just seems like a shameless attempt to try to get the studio more money based off of a name from a franchise, and it's interesting because like I didn't like Scream 2. I didn't really like Scream. No, I probably sincerely disliked Scream 3. Scream 4 and Scream 5 are better movies, but for some reason, like I can't break out of the mold of, the first 3 movies are the only ones that are really important and everything else just seems like sort of a tacked on chapter to something, a cheap money play or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah. I think with Scream 4, the reason you feel that way is just because there was so much time in between. I think with Scream 5, there's probably some of that as well, but we're so far beyond. We're 25 years beyond the original, and they did a more than admirable job, in my opinion, of bringing back and kind of tying back to the original. But you're 25 years past. Like,
what story is left to tell?
Yeah, who gives a shit, right? It's like, okay, yeah, Sydney's around, and okay, I guess.
Yeah,
and now they
could bring her back, right?
But they've tied in. At this point, we're in like main characters of Scream's kids or nephews, or at this point, okay, it was a cool story, but okay, like we get it,
right?
We're good. So
yeah.
So again, I thoroughly enjoyed this movie, and again, I would recommend this movie.
Yeah.
But if you've never seen any of the Scream movies, you're not going to get it. You might enjoy the movie as a slasher movie, but you're not going to get nearly as much out of it. And you're not going to enjoy it nearly as much as Pip and I did.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely did like the movie. I thought it was a credible horror movie, but I also thought to myself the whole time, why are we doing this? Like what story is left to tell for Sidney Prescott or for Gale Weathers or for Dewey or for any of these characters? And, spoiler alert, there is no more story for Dewey, but, they left Courtney Cox and Neve Campbell alive to potentially bring back for more movies. I don't expect to see either one of them. I mean, here's the $1 million question. Do we expect to see Scream 6? Like, is there going to be another movie? I mean, we know that there's a lot of fan speculation about the possibility of bringing back older characters or doing any of that, but do we care at this point? Like, do we need it? Would it benefit us, or should we just let sleeping dogs lie at this point?
Yeah. So to answer your final question, I think we should let sleeping dogs lie. I mean, the only character that we have not addressed is the character of Stu, Matthew Lillard, who got, in the original Scream got a TV dropped on his head. That would fuck me up. That would kill me.
Yeah. I'd be gone.
But there's some speculation. Did the character die? What have you?
Right.
But here's the problem, and we talked about this earlier this weekend. In my mind, even as a Scream aficionado, the character of Stu is not enough to bring back the franchise again. It's just not.
Agreed.
Like you kind of shot your load with Billy Loomis. You brought him back, Skeet Ulrich, in this movie.
Yep.
You're gonna bring back an accomplice? Like,
it's going to feel really lame.
It's going to feel really lame. And Sidney Prescott was kind of in this movie a little bit, but it really wasn't even about her. Really wasn't. Like, she came back.
No, it had nothing to do with her.
But it really wasn't about her,
Nothing.
right? It was about Billy's kid. And so at this point, if you try to do another one, the only way you can do it is to bring back Stu. And that's a losing formula, in my opinion.
Yeah. Or just cut everybody off from the old movies, right? Well, no more Sidney.
And you could do that too.
No more Gale.
Right? You could do that too. But if you're going to do that, you got to do it with characters from this movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's not, in my opinion, there's not characters that are strong enough from this movie to do that.
That I agree with. So, I think the lead character or the lead female character from Scream 5, I think she was decent, but I don't think she carried the torch in the same kind of way. I don't think there's any more torch to carry. Right. I got to be honest. Like, I'm not sure that there's another actress that could have pulled this off any better, because I feel like they're just really trying to squeeze everything they have out of this series. And if there's one thing that Hollywood is not good at doing, because they love to make money, it is saying, you know what, we're done.
We're done.
Like, we cannot tell this story. Like, this story came out a very specific place. We told the story probably a couple too many times. We just need to stop and say, you know what, we're good.
Yeah,
we're done.
I really wish they would have brought Matthew Lillard back for this episode and completely tied a bow on it. We got that. Billy and Stu, we're done. We told the story.
Killed Sidney Prescott.
Well,
they should have just killed her.
That too. They killed.
Every time they don't kill her, they just leave it open for a sequel. Yeah. And that's great if Neve Campbell wants another paycheck and the studio wants to cash in on that. Like, no judgment. Like, I don't say that disparagingly. I just mean, like, if that's what they want to do, that's fine. But every time they don't do that, we're just setting it up for her coming back for the next one. And the more we water this down, the more I ask myself, why are we doing this?
Yeah, I guess the only good news in my mind is at this point, we've gotten to a point in the chronology of Scream where there's no more villains left that are worth making a sequel for.
Nobody cares about who's left.
Nobody cares about Stu.
Yeah.
And at this point, nobody really cares about Sidney's story anymore. Like, she's defeated Ghostface so many times that if you bring her back again, if you bring her back again, you have two choices: you either kill her or you make her the killer. Like that's all that's left.
Yeah.
And I don't, candidly, I don't want to see either of those stories.
Well, here's what's interesting is that of all the horror movie franchises, Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, Halloween, all the killers are the same person.
Right.
It's all Freddy Krueger. It's Jason Voorhees. It's Michael Myers. With Scream, it's somebody different every time. So eventually that's going to get watered down to the point where people just don't care, because eventually you have to kill a bunch of these people. So this is all going to recycle. So it's not like the same sort of, mystique that we had in the 80s where you had this one guy that just kept coming back.
You're right. We say Ghostface killer, but it's always somebody different.
Right. It's always somebody different. And eventually people are just going to get bored with that. It's not interesting anymore, because the Ghostface is just the mask. That's all it is, to cover up whoever's doing it. But every time we make these movies, the person under the mask is somebody who has a motive of some kind, but it's usually something, pretty suspect or subjectively uninteresting, in that it's like, well, it's somebody's daughter or somebody's grandkid or somebody's third cousin's roommate's
former roommate.
Yeah,
former
whatever.
Cousin, right. Yeah.
So, I mean, like, I think we're very quickly, no matter what, we're getting towards the end of Scream. I just don't think there's anything more to tell.
I would agree with that. It was a good entry. It was probably one of my favorite entries since the original, but I would agree. Yeah. I'm done.
And I think we should say out loud, it's okay to be done with Scream. Yeah. It's okay to say, you know what, this movie franchise, it was great while it lasted, but it's done. We should feel more comfortable about doing that, because it's when we don't do that, we have things that just continue on and it dilutes the original product, and it's no good. And that's severely disappointing. It
is. So on that note, it is okay to be done. And this has been the 411 from 406. We're going to come at you probably tomorrow night, or at the very least, we'll give you a recap in the next week or so. My name is Chewie. I've been joined once again by my brother from another mother, Mr. Pip. Have a good evening, sir. It's good to see you.
Adios.
All right. See ya.